What if I told you that the secret to unlocking some insane next-level focus has absolutely nothing to do with discipline? Yeah, we're all told to just try harder, right? To have more willpower. But honestly, that's a losing game. The real secret is in the design of your day. This is the story of how I stopped fighting my own brain and stumbled upon a system of focus so simple and so effective, it almost feels like a cheat code.
It always started the same way. Me, just staring at a screen with a project that should have been done hours ago. I was just completely, utterly stuck, paralyzed by the weight of it all, and yet totally incapable of even starting.
And the clock on the wall felt like it was just mocking me. 2 in the morning, a deadline hanging right over my head, my heart pounding with anxiety, and the only thing happening was that little cursor on the blank page, just blinking and blinking and blinking. It was this constant low-grade hum of failure.
And that was the part that was truly crushing. It just kept happening, night after night. I'd swear to myself that this time would be different, but I'd always end up right back in that same chair, exhausted, mindlessly scrolling on my phone, just grabbing at any cheap distraction to escape that awful feeling of being stuck.
For years, I was so sure the problem was me, that I was just lazy, right? That I lacked the right amount of willpower. I tried every app, every planner, every single productivity hack you could think of, and nothing ever stuck. Then, in one of those late-night moments of pure desperation, I finally realized the truth. The problem wasn't my discipline. It was the entire system I was trying to use. So my first real breakthrough came when I finally understood that I was fighting a war against my own brain chemistry, a war I was never, ever gonna win. So I stopped fighting, and I started negotiating. I decided to make a deal with my brain's reward system. So the idea is actually super simple, almost deceptively so. Our brains are basically wired to chase dopamine, that feeling of pleasure or reward. Procrastination is really just your brain choosing an easy, instant reward over a difficult, delayed one. So, I decided to hijack that system. I linked something I really wanted to do with the one task I was dreading the most. For me, that meant I was only allowed to have my favorite kind of expensive coffee while I was working on that specific project. And let me tell you, the effect was dramatic. That dreaded task, all on its own, offered my brain pretty much zero dopamine reward. But the second I bundled it with the coffee, my brain's perceived reward just shot through the roof. Suddenly, the task wasn't a chore I had to suffer through, it was now the gateway to something I genuinely enjoyed. I was basically tricking my brain into wanting to get to work. And just like that, the gears finally started to turn. That blinking cursor finally started moving, and it turned into sentences, and then paragraphs. The piles of paper on my desk actually started to shrink. Now, it wasn't some miracle overnight, but it was momentum. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt a real, genuine glimmer of hope. But that momentum, well, it created a new problem. I'd get started, work for hours in this caffeine-fueled haze, and then I'd just completely crash. I was burning out. So the dopamine deal got me moving, but I desperately needed a way to sustain that energy without hitting a wall. I had to find a rhythm. And that's when I stumbled onto something called ultradian rhythms. It turns out our brains are naturally designed to operate in cycles. We have about 90 minutes of peak, high-frequency brain activity, which is perfect for deep focus. And that's followed by a really crucial 20-minute period where our brain needs to rest and recover. And I'd been ignoring this fundamental biological rhythm my entire life. So instead of trying to just power through for hours on end, I started working with that natural wave. I'd set a timer for 90 minutes of pure, uninterrupted focus. And when that timer went off, no matter what, I would stop. I'd get up, walk away from my desk, and for 20 minutes, I'd do absolutely anything but work.
This was a total game changer. I wasn't fighting my brain anymore, I was actually partnering with it. And those 20-minute breaks, they weren't a sign of weakness, they were strategic advantage. I'd come back to each 90-minute block feeling sharp and refreshed, not depleted. I was getting way more done in way less time, and actually finishing the day with energy to spare.
Okay, so now I had a system to start and a rhythm to sustain. But one final enemy remained, that little glowing rectangle of infinite distraction that lives in my pocket. Defeating it required the final and probably most counterintuitive piece of the puzzle, the one I like to call the colorless escape. Okay, just look at this for a second. On the left, you've got a normal phone screen. Every single bright red notification badge, every colorful app icon has been scientifically engineered to trigger a little dopamine hit in your brain. It's literally designed to be addictive. And on the right, that's the same phone, but in grayscale.
With one tiny change in the settings, I stripped the phone of its primary weapon against my attention. The impact was immediate and just staggering. My mindless, subconscious phone pickups just plummeted. Without those stimulating colors, my brain simply lost interest. My phone went from being this irresistible slot machine to being a boring, utilitarian tool. It became wonderfully, profoundly uninteresting.
And this was the final key. With the phone's power completely neutralized, my 90-minute focus sessions became truly immersive. The outside world just melted away. There was no background itch to check a notification, no mental energy being wasted on resisting temptation. I was finally experiencing that state of deep, effortless flow that I had always heard about, but never, ever thought was possible for me.
So what began as this desperate late-night struggle had slowly evolved into a repeatable system. And it's not just a collection of random tips, it's a blueprint for designing an environment where deep focus becomes the default setting, not something you have to constantly fight for. And this is the result of that transformation. It was never about becoming a new person with some kind of superhuman discipline. It was about building a better system to support the person I already was. The change from anxious and overwhelmed to calm and effective, it was literally like night and day.
And here's the entire blueprint right here. It starts with making that dopamine deal to overcome the initial resistance. Then, it's all about finding your rhythm with those 90-20 work cycles to sustain your energy. And finally, you seal the deal with the colorless escape, turning your phone grayscale to protect your attention. See, each piece builds on the last, creating this fortress for your focus.
So, look, if you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. The answer isn't more willpower. It's better design. You don't need to force yourself to focus. You need to create a system where focus is the easiest and most rewarding choice you can possibly make.
So yeah, this isn't just my story anymore. This is a roadmap. The only question left is, what are you going to accomplish when your focus is finally yours to command?